Atlanteans, please prepare for takeoff.
All troopers, focus your fire on the Jedi.
Our future is uncertain. But in time, a new hope will emerge.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Order 66.
Hello, welcome to the very first episode of Rebels Rewind. My name is Kevin, and joining me is my longtime friend, Nate.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm doing great, really great.
I am so excited to finally be doing a podcast with you.
Yeah, no, I am too. This is great. This is a great idea.
Yeah, so we're going to have plenty of content, I think, to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So let's dig right into it. What did you think going in? Was it what you expected? Were you expecting more?
You know what? It wasn't what I was expecting in a good way. Because, I mean, let me kind of rewind a little bit in the sense that I got into Clone Wars actually kind of late. I saw the movie when it first came out in theaters, and I didn't love it. I thought it was okay, but there was a lot of issues with it initially. So I was like, I don't know about the show. And I watched the first couple, and I'm like, yeah, this is okay. And then I just got out of it. And it wasn't until, I don't know, probably till like season 2 or 3 when I finally started watching it pretty regularly, and I'm like, oh my god, this is great.
The movie itself, I think, turned a lot of people off.
Yeah, it's not good.
No, it was really meant to just be an introduction, and I think they cram. It was 4 episodes, right? It turned into a movie.
Yeah, 3 or 4 that they edited together.
Yeah, and it didn't go over well at all.
No, and it was probably, looking back on that whole first season, that's probably the least of those episodes.
Yeah, well, they definitely got better as they went.
Yeah. Oh yeah, by far. I mean, by the 4th or 5th episode, I was like, oh crap, why did I stop watching this?
Yeah. Well,
and so,
and to your point, going back, jumping in like middle of season 3, that's really where I think they hit their stride.
Yeah.
Once they hit the mid-season point of season 3, when they started going in chronological order instead of jumping all over the place.
Yeah.
I think that's really where they started figuring things out.
Yeah. So with, when I got really into it, and honestly, that show is kind of what saved Star Wars fandom for me, because I had, by 2005, 2006, 2007, I was kind of out of it. And so then, discovering the show and discovering the toys then that were out at the time, which, I got into those late as well. So I was playing catch up on those. But that really saved me. I mean, I looking back now, that makes, and I'm not going to sit here and I'm not going to be that guy that talks bad about the prequels. There's some great stuff in there. There's some not so great stuff. But that show is really what really, I guess, kind of cemented that era for me as a great era.
Yeah. And it gave so much more depth to what the movies had in them.
Yes.
That was, I think, the most amazing part of that show, looking back on it as a whole, is that they took something that was made years later and actually made episode 3 that much better.
Yeah, it really filled in gaps. It really explained the whole bringing balance to the Force. That one particular episode was really great, and bringing back that sense of fun that I think we're missing in the prequels. There really wasn't as much adventure and fun. It was telling a specific story, and it was kind of like, okay, we got to go from A to B to C by the end of this, and they really didn't leave a lot of side stories, which was great about this. So when I found out that it was being canceled, I was like, oh, it had been on a long time, but I mean, I felt like it had really hit its stride by like season 4 and season 5. So I was really disappointed to hear that it was getting canceled. But then when I heard what was going to replace it, I couldn't help but be a little bit excited. And when you first asked, what did I think? It wasn't what I was expecting, and I can't even really tell you what I was expecting, but this far exceeded it. And from the very first few seconds when the Star Destroyer comes into view, I was like, okay, this really has been what I'm missing. As fun as the Clone Wars was, I want to see the Empire. I want to see stormtroopers. I want to see TIE fighters, and that's exactly what I got.
They really did manage in the first 15, 20 seconds of that. I guess they're calling it a movie, the premiere, the Spark of Rebellion. In the first 15 or 20 seconds, they managed to tell everyone what this is going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I thought that was great, and the sounds. I mean, you want to talk about? I mean, it's a bit of nostalgia, but you hear that TIE fighter, and you can't help but just get a little giddy.
Yeah, well, I said that the first time we saw the trailer for the show, like the TV spots they were doing for what seemed like an eternity, we were seeing so many pieces of this show before it even aired. I wanted to talk about that in a little bit too, the way they're rolling these episodes out. But yeah, it felt like home. I guess is the best way to put it. You heard the TIE fighters, and then they come in with the John Williams music, and it's Star Wars. There's no other way to really explain it.
Unequivocally, I mean, the music that they use, the choice music cues, which I can come back to is one of it's a plus and a minus at the same time.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I was gonna talk about that a little bit later on too. I think I was really into how much they were using it in Spark of Rebellion.
Yeah.
And then it seemed like I noticed it was being a little bit overused probably midway through the Droids in Distress episode that we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Is that what you noticed?
Yeah, that's exactly how I felt, because I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. They're using the Imperial March, they're using the Obi-Wan theme, and then I think it was in Droids in Distress or at the end of Spark of Rebellion that they were using the Princess Leia theme, to which I was like, okay, I get it, but maybe we should try to use a little bit of our own and do something original, and we'll see how it progresses throughout the series. But yeah, they're riding a fine line there, I think.
Yeah, well, the guy who's doing the composing for Rebels is also the same guy who did the Clone Wars.
Right.
But it just seemed like the score wasn't ever really in the forefront of Clone Wars.
Right. It was just incidental music.
Yeah, and I guess from what I understand, they're going to do a collected soundtrack from the Clone Wars, and I'd really be interested to hear what that sounds like without the actual show on top of it.
Yeah.
Because they did some really cool stuff with the music in that series.
Yeah.
But most of it got buried.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So, I mean, what were your first initial thoughts? Was it what you wanted?
Of Rebels?
Yeah.
It was pretty much what I expected. I think one of the things that kind of spoiled me a little bit with the Spark of Rebellion, the original one, or the launching point, was it felt like we had seen so much of the show already from the TV spots and the trailers, and I don't know, I maybe I spoiled it for myself a little bit by watching too many of those.
I think you did, because I don't have TV. I cut my cable last year, so I have been kind of on a media blockout on this. In fact, I really didn't even watch like the Comic-Con trailer or anything like that, because I wanted to go in blind. So other than a few pictures here and there, I mean, I didn't even hear any of the voices going into it. So I really knew nothing.
And you know what? That's probably why I felt the way I did with the first one. Like, I loved it. I really enjoyed it, but it didn't feel as new to me as what I was hoping it would, and I think that was why.
Yeah.
But overall, I really liked it. I like the animation. They're paying so much attention to making that show look like a living Ralph McQuarrie painting that it's gorgeous.
Yes. In fact, because I kind of want to get into the characters here in a minute, but just one of the first things that jumped out at me was the fact that Zeb looks just like the concept painting for Chewbacca. So what Wookiees would have looked like.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really great.
And you also have Chopper, who looks like the original concept for R2D2.
Yeah, and the helmet that Ezra gets is very similar to the concept Snowtrooper too.
Yes, very much so.
So I thought that was great. So I mean, let's kind of, since we kind of talked about initial thoughts, you wanted to kind of jump into the characters?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. So, did you read A New Dawn?
I didn't.
Okay.
And now I really want to.
Well, it's A New Dawn was pretty much a origin story for Kanan.
Okay.
That was really the only. I mean, Hera was in the story, but Kanan was really the only one that we got a lot of backstory for. That the book really focuses on him and them meeting, but you follow him more so than you do her.
Now, where does it start, like timeline wise? Because from what I understand, the show picks up about 5 years before A New Hope.
Yes. Yeah. The book, well, they started with a flashback. They start with Kanan as a Padawan in the Jedi Temple.
Okay.
Listening to Obi-Wan give a presentation about the beacon, the recording, you know, that was supposed to tell all the Jedi to come back to the temple if there was something tragically wrong.
Yeah.
That they end up using to warn all the Jedi to stay away. So they kind of tied that into his beginning of his Jedi training, because he ends up asking a question about, well, can it be used to keep people away? Like, they use that kind of angle.
Okay.
But so you get a little bit of that, and then you fast forward to what I'm assuming is maybe a year or so before the actual show picked up in Spartan Rebellion, because you in the book you never see, you don't know how they come to know Zeb, you don't find out how they found Sabine,
because she's definitely someone I'm really interested in. So that would be, I'm going to be curious to see then that play out, hopefully, as the show goes on.
right? And that was one of the things that I liked about the Droids in Distress episode, was that we did start to get some of Zeb's backstory.
Yeah.
Because like I said, in the novel, they really just focused on Kanan. There wasn't any other origin story for the rest of the characters. He ends up running into Hera, who's on kind of a solo mission. She's kind of on her own crusade against the Empire, and she's trying to find people to join her. Is how the book kind of unfolds.
Okay.
So, so you follow the book through. They meet. I'm not going to ruin the book for anybody, but they go through. But at the end of the novel, it's still just the two of them. So we still hopefully get to see how the rest of that came about. And I kind of like the way they did it in the Droids in Distress episode. You started to get some Zeb backstory without actually doing a whole episode about him.
Right. And and forgive me, because I stopped reading books, like the expanded universe stuff. I kind of stopped probably around the same time as episode 3. But I mean, do we really know much about his people, or was this really the first mention of it?
That was really the first mention.
Okay.
Yeah,
sometimes I never know if it's something I'm supposed to know that I missed, or if it's new.
No. If they pulled anything from what they revealed in that Droids in Distress episode from what used to be the expanded universe,
yeah,
I didn't catch anything from it.
Well, and I guess that's a good point too, since this is really, I mean, while Clone Wars is official, this is really the beginning of the new Disney canon.
Right.
So yeah, they may not pull anything from the rest of the expanded universe as far as books.
Yeah, well, they did with the those disruptor rifles that were focused around that second episode.
Okay.
Those were, I want to say it was the Han Solo novels. I can't think of the name of it now.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
But it's that kind of thing that I did notice. They've got this vast library that they did away with, and I think gradually we're just going to see them pick out
Yeah.
things that they liked, things that they actually want to have in official canon.
And really, isn't that kind of what they should do? Because not all of that stuff was great.
No, not all of it. I mean, they definitely took a quantity over quality approach, especially, heading into like the New Jedi Order and things like that. That's when I really kind of lost interest when they're doing 19 books in a series, and
Right.
there's no way there's enough story there to necessitate 19 books.
Yeah. Now, and Zeb was a character that I really liked. I really liked Sabine. She's very interesting. Same with Hera. Not a lot in these first few with any of those in particular. But I mean, what did you think of Ezra? And is it Kanan? Kanan.
Yeah.
I hear it and then I forget it.
Yeah, I think I'm really gonna like where they go with it. It's going to be interesting to see someone else train a Padawan.
Right.
Because we've only seen that a handful of times. So it'll be interesting to see what the differences are in the way Kanan approaches teaching as opposed to the Jedi that we've seen do it up until this point.
Right, because we've only seen in the post Order 66 universe, we've only seen Yoda train Luke.
Right.
And really, if you go by that, Luke becomes a Jedi in an afternoon and a half.
Right, and you know what? I was thinking about that during the Droids episode, because it opens up with him moving the bowl.
Yeah.
And then we go straight into, well, when can I start the Jedi training? And it sounds like he hasn't done any, but we're already moving bowls around. So that's immediately what I thought was, after a day and a half, he's floating rocks and he's got Yoda balanced on him. So maybe that is the new approach.
Yeah.
They figure they don't have as much time.
Yeah, I really liked Kanan. I thought, I honestly, I was really surprised to figure out that was the character that Freddie Prinze Jr. was voicing. And I'm not gonna, I don't have anything against Freddie Prinze Jr. It's kind of a joke. I mean, we were obviously of age to be around in the late '90s when he was kind of a thing,
right?
But I thought he was great.
Oh yeah,
he really like his voice, his portrayal. He's very commanding and confident, but at the same time, you can definitely tell he's seen some stuff. And the thing that I probably liked, one of the things I like the most about Spark of Rebellion, they're good guys in the sense that they're fighting the Empire, but they're not great guys. I mean, they are smugglers. They are criminals, really.
Right.
And it's a blurred line, and I thought that was really cool.
Well, and I think that's really important, especially when you're establishing this as kind of the beginning of the rebellion,
right? In
that they do have to scrape. Sometimes they have to do some things that morally they know they shouldn't do, but I think it ends up being for the greater good.
Yeah, because you have to fund what you're doing.
Exactly. The beginning of the Droids episode where they decide to do the gun smuggling. That was a really good example of, almost that, and that's where we go into some of the Zeb backstory, where we find out that his race was basically wiped out by these guns.
Kanan, we're low on everything.
Food.
Explosives. Fuel. We need to make some money, or we might as well put the ghost in storage.
There's always Vizago's job.
So we're arms dealers again?
More like arms redistributors.
Come on. We don't even know what kind of weapons we're talking about here.
Right. I was going to say, the only thing, I'm not entirely sold on Ezra yet. And kids can be a tricky thing. I look at Ahsoka, when the show first started, I mean, especially in the movie, I'm like, why did they do this? This is the worst character I've ever seen. I couldn't halfway through,
her.
she's my favorite character.
Yeah.
And so this could easily go that way. I think my only complaint about at least the ongoing structure, I love that Kanan is a former Jedi and he had kept it secret and he revealed that. I don't know if I love the idea of also Ezra being force sensitive as well. We'll see how that goes. It seemed a little convenient, but really, Star Wars is all about convenience.
Yeah. Uh, that one problem I had with Kanan being so upfront with him being a Jedi is throughout the novel, and I know you haven't read it. I'm going to keep going back to it.
That's fine.
Because it's the only really basis I have to judge what's going on in the show. But they spent the majority of that book exploring how he's basically hidden and turned away from the Force.
Yeah.
In the years since Order 66. And then we get to Spark of Rebellion, and the first time they're in a fight, he's whipping out his lightsaber.
Right.
So I'm like, I just spent, a week or so reading a book about how he's stayed hidden for the last 16 years. And literally, the first time they get into any trouble, he's slamming his lightsaber together and jumping out in front of Imperials.
Yeah, with like 15 stormtroopers.
Right. If they weren't in big enough trouble before,
right?
That's really going to help. Let's let the Empire know where the Jedi are. So that was a little bit confusing to me. The Ezra thing, I'm still on the fence.
Yeah.
About him, I do keep going back to that Ahsoka argument in my head too. I think that's allowing me to give them time to grow that character a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not going to make any snap judgments.
No.
It's just to me he's the weakest link right now.
Right. And I keep seeing Aladdin.
Okay, yeah. No, I get it. The nose and the hair.
And not just that, the stealing, the jumping around in the city, he ended up helping the guy but still taking the fruit from him. All I saw in that first episode was it's Star Wars with Aladdin.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
It got a little bit better in the second episode. I guess they didn't have him doing quite as much of that.
Yeah.
But that was my snap judgment. That was the first thing I thought of when I actually saw more of him than just, 4 or 5 seconds in a trailer.
Well, I guess we'll kind of talk a few more things, and then we can move into the actual second episode, which is going to be kind of the format that we follow for this. We didn't get hardly anything of the Inquisitor, which is fine so far. But I mean, that's interesting. I'm curious to see how that unfolds. But I did really like Agent Callus. I think that's going to be an interesting foil, and somebody that's, as an Imperial bad guy, I like that it's not just necessarily a Sith or Force wielder,
right?
But it is an actual, agent in this case, but an officer, basically.
They knew our protocol and were waiting in position.
I've no doubt. You're not the first on Lothal hit by this crew.
That's a relief. I assume that's why you're here, Agent Callus.
The Imperial Security Bureau pays attention to patterns. When the Empire's operations are targeted on an ongoing basis, it could signify something more than the theft of a few crates. It could signify the spark of rebellion. Next time they make a move, we'll be waiting for them to snuff out that spark before it catches fire.
Yeah, I was really happy with that too, because they do need to establish that type of evil as opposed to, like, the Sith of the weak.
Yeah.
Type scenario where all of a sudden, there's another assassin running out somewhere with a red lightsaber.
Yeah. We got a lot of that in Clone Wars.
We did. There were an awful lot of Sith running around, or people who thought they were Sith.
Right.
I'm definitely interested in seeing them establish more of the Imperial ranks. And maybe it'll be interesting to see if they, because, we're seeing them as the main bad guys in this, and I'm really interested to see if they'll explore how Vader's relationship, or however you want to look at it, his rule over these Imperials, because I want to see how they react to Vader when he's not around. We've never seen that.
That was what I was going to bring up. So I went ahead and bought the Spark of Rebellion DVD that came out Tuesday.
Okay.
See, the whole thing is, like I said before, I don't have cable, but when it comes to things like this, or like for me, for like Doctor Who, like I like to support, what it is I'm into. So I mean, obviously there are other ways to get a hold of stuff, but the things that I really enjoy and that I want to support, I will go out of my way to either purchase them or whatever. And on iTunes, Spark of Rebellion was like $8 or $9, or the DVD was like 13. So I was like, well, I'm going to buy that.
That's what I was going to ask you. I wondered how much they were.
Yeah, it was like $13, and it was the 44-minute thing, and it had some extras on it too. But I heard that ABC is going to premiere it. We know we're so close to that being played, it's probably going to be on the DVD, and it wasn't.
I would imagine we're probably not going to see that until they do a season 1 set.
Yeah. I'm hoping they at least make that scene available online. Either at StarWars.com or something. Just because we did watch it. I did buy the DVD, so I went out of my way.
Yeah.
Or at least it shows up on Hulu, so I can watch it. Because I am interested to seeing what the relationship between Vader and the Inquisitor is, and see how that plays out. Exactly like you said, because right now there is no threat of Vader, and even if he's not going to be in the show a lot, we need to know he's there and that is a definite, enemy and a definite threat.
Right, and not just for the rebels, for the Imperials as well. Right. They need to keep one eye over their shoulder. They never know what they're going to do to end up bringing the wrath down on them.
Right.
That's kind of what I'd like to see too. I'd really like to see that type of infrastructure where they're worried about failing, basically.
Yeah. Yep. And then the one last thing before we jump into Droids in Distress, the one thing that I really, really liked was that, so we had the appearance of Obi-Wan at the end of Spark of Rebellion on the Holocron, and it was James Arnold Taylor, the guy who did the voice in the Clone Wars, which, bridges that gap. But the Stormtroopers were not voiced by the same guy, and then forgive me, I forget his name off the top of my head, but they were not the same guy that did all the clone voices in the Clone Wars, which leads me to believe that these are not clones. At least for the most part, they are not clones.
That's the way I took it as well.
Yeah, and I've never liked the idea that Stormtroopers were clones. I'm sure that there's probably a few of them out there or whatnot, but I kind of thought they were bred for short-term use and that they wouldn't be around 20-some years later.
Right. Oh, we've already seen how degraded the skills are.
Right.
We're 2 episodes into Rebels, and they haven't hit a thing.
No, that's the Stormtroopers we know.
Right. If you can't hit 3PO running across a hallway.
Right. Which was a great scene.
It was.
But yeah, so I really enjoyed that the Stormtroopers were different voices, and I really liked... well,
they were even different sizes, too.
Yeah. I love the mask design. It looks like a Stormtrooper, obviously, but it's a stylized look. And then I loved the scene, I think it was at the end of, and forgive me because I watched them all today, at the end of Spark of Rebellion, though, when the Stormtrooper's like, was this your first Jedi? And Callus just kicks him off the...
Yes.
That was pretty great.
Yeah, that was awesome. And for the most part, it probably was their first Jedi.
Yeah. Well, for them, yeah.
Definitely. And that's... I go back to what I said about him revealing himself too early. That's going to be a sticking point with me, I think, but I get why they did it.
Yeah.
It's, for all intents and purposes, a kid's show.
Right.
Even though we're going to watch it as much, if not more, than the kids will. But you have to have somebody wielding a lightsaber in episode 1 of a series that you're making for kids. Yep. There's no way around it.
Even if he doesn't do it again for a while. And I like the idea, though, that there's not going to be a Jedi. I mean, other than Kanan, there's not going to be a Jedi every week. And he may not pull the lightsaber out every week as well. And they're going to be few and far between because there shouldn't be that many of them around. And did you see the trailer for the actual full season?
No.
Okay, so I don't want to spoil it because it is on the DVD. I know that we're going to see one other Clone Wars veteran.
I do know who that is.
Yeah, so we'll leave that go for now. But I thought that was really cool, and because I don't want it to be, let's save a Clone Wars guy every week, but having one in season 1 is cool.
Yeah, I think we'll see some of that just because of how many people are working on Rebels that worked on the Clone Wars. They spent a decade with those characters. They're going to get them in there at some point. Some of them.
Yeah. Some of them.
We don't need too many.
No, because a lot of them didn't make it.
Right. And I think that's a good place to jump into Droids in Distress, because I was pretty surprised that we saw R2-D2 and C-3PO as early as we have in the series.
Yep.
I had a few preconceived notions going into that episode. I ended up liking it a lot more than I thought I would. The way they spun it, but
the end saves it.
It does. It really does. But
I had some issues during the episode.
Yeah, it was right up till the end, and then you kind of figure out what they were doing there. But in the beginning, when they first walk onto the shuttle, it's like they're coming out of nowhere.
Yeah.
You're like, how big is this galaxy? Are there 4 planets in the galaxy? How did they get there so quick?
I mean, if you go by the first 3, there's only like 6 girls in all of Star Wars. So
I guess that's true.
But yeah, I felt the same way a little bit. My initially, and this is going to be weird because I don't like C-3PO and R2-D2 very much. They're probably my least favorite characters, which is ironic because I loved the Droids cartoon from like 84, 85.
Mm-hmm.
Love that show.
Yep.
But I'm not a huge fan of them per se. And I was a little surprised to see them, episode 2, basically, that we're jumping in with that. But like you said, I mean, because the end kind of does save it. Because I had a lot of issues there because I'm like, okay, because George Lucas ended episode 3 or Revenge of the Sith in such a bow, they were left with Captain Antilles, which is where they were at the beginning of episode 4.
Mm-hmm.
And I never liked that because I liked the idea of those 2 droids getting passed around in those 20 years.
Right.
Said I liked that Droids cartoon, and they ended up in the hands of 3 different groups during the course of that season.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, well, why would they be with the Empire if they were left with Captain Antilles? And so then that got fixed.
Yeah, it got fixed in the end, but I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, how did they get there? How did Antilles lose them? Are we going to get to see that? I was going through all those questions in my head when they first walked on the shuttle. So let me read the actual description of the episode, and then we'll get into it a little bit.
Yep.
As soon as I find it. Here it is. All right, Droids in Distress. The episode was written by Greg Wiseman and directed by Stuart Lee. The description of the episode is: low on food and fuel, the Ghost crew agrees to steal a weapon shipment from the crime lord Vizago. During the mission, they encounter a familiar droid duo and find the weapons in question are more deadly than they realized. So we start off with them deciding that they're broke and need to run these guns to fuel the ship and get food. And I read today something that made a ton of sense to me, and I was almost ashamed that I didn't think of it while I was watching the episode. Someone compared that first sequence to Firefly.
Oh, yeah.
It was like a total Firefly moment where they're broke and they have to go make a deal or smuggle something.
Right.
And I thought that was a good comparison. But you got a sense almost immediately that Zeb had major issues with running the guns.
Yep.
And at that point, he doesn't even really know which guns they are. So I kind of get the impression he's turned off on them completely. He doesn't really like to use them or have them around. He has his what is that? A staff, the bow staff, that he uses. But that was a really good setup, I think, for the rest of the episode, was him immediately having problems with that.
Yeah.
And then, so once they go down and board the shuttle, that's where we see R2 and 3PO walk in, and there was another droid in there that some people noticed. Did you catch the pilot droid?
No.
That the pilot droid was named Rex, RX-24.
Okay.
That was a callback to the original Star Tours ride.
Nice.
And that droid was actually voiced by Paul Rubens.
Okay. All right.
So
sounded familiar. So.
Yeah, he did. For those of you that don't know, Paul Rubens is Pee Wee Herman. He played Pee Wee Herman. It's hard to say he played him because he really was him for such a long time.
Yeah, that was him. I mean, he sometimes plays other roles, but generally. Right.
But yeah, so we now live in a world where Pee Wee Herman is official Star Wars canon.
Yeah.
To some extent.
Love it.
But that was, and I guess even the design of the shuttle itself and the call sign, the numbers that they use for the specific shuttle was an exact callback to the original Star Tours. So
that's great.
They kind of peppered that in there for people in the know. You know, I mean, it could blow by somebody, but I thought it was a neat little nod that they added in, and they did a lot of that in Clone Wars as well.
Yeah, oh yeah, there were a lot of little Easter eggs for fans.
Yeah, and even in the same sequence, you have when the pilot tells the droids to go to the back.
Yeah.
You end up with R2-D2 and C-3PO and Chopper and the other protocol droid when you look at all four of them, you've got 3PO and R2-D2 and then the Macquarie designs for 3PO and R2-D2 all standing together. I thought that was a great moment. Yeah.
Well, do you want to go into like our two favorite things?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. Because, I mean, for the first one for me, is going to be real close to that, but almost all of the background aliens were aliens that were from, if not like the first original movie, at least the first original trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of Cantina-related aliens that are used in the background of these first two episodes, which I thought was great. And just in like in that shuttle scene, there was the Walrus Man, looking guy. And then in the other episode, there was a Hammerhead, and there's the Devorian, and all that stuff was really, to me, a really great callback to that era.
Yeah, you had a Rodian in that scene, too, sitting in the back. And the guy sitting right behind Zeb and Sabine was wearing the same costume that the Macquarie paintings were done for, like, the original Han Solo. He had that kind of headpiece and like the headband covering the ears. It looked very much like that original artwork that you would see from the original poster where that was the actual character holding the lightsaber.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping it doesn't get to the point that some of the music is, where we're seeing that too much and it kind of detracts from the story itself. But at least up until this point, I've really enjoyed seeing the designs of those characters in the stylized art of the show.
Yeah.
It's, you're seeing familiar characters, but at the same time, they look new just because of the style of the show.
Yep. So what about for you? What was one of yours?
I think one of my favorites was probably, I've really enjoyed Chopper up until this point.
Okay.
Yeah. He's fun, and I don't know what his problem is with Ezra, but he just has seemed to take in a big brother role already, where he's doing nothing but picking on him and poking him and electrocuting him. But I really, even from the beginning, I know I talked about watching all those trailers and everything, but that I was really drawn to him from the beginning. I guess, I don't know. It seemed like a really new character to me.
Now, you talking Chopper or Zeb?
Chopper.
Okay, the robot.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Zeb too, to some extent, but I don't think that was his relationship with Ezra wasn't more of a picking on Big Brother role. He really had some resentment there.
Yeah, no, yeah, I get
for
what you're
a
saying.
while.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've enjoyed Chopper quite a bit. I think we're going to probably get to a point to where a little of him goes a long way too. But at least for right now, he's fun. I was laughing at some of the things he did. So I thought that was really cool. But the other thing that I think this is probably the number one thing that I like about the show so far is just the way it looks.
Okay.
I know we're focused on story and characters and things like that, but it's so beautifully drawn that you could watch it 4 or 5 times and see something different.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah.
You know, when we were talking right before we started recording, I said it was like a living Macquarie painting, and that's really what it looks like. So that's probably what I think, at least right now, some of my favorite things. I think as we get to know the characters a little bit more, I'll probably end up liking one of them more than what I just got done talking about. But
right.
I just really interested to see. I'm almost reserving judgment on which characters I'm going to like the most because we don't know anything about them yet.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of things, and one of my other favorite thing was going to be one of the characters, but just like you say, we just don't know enough yet. So I'm going to have to say that my other favorite thing from the episode was the end. The callback and the tie-in there.
That was the Bail Organa scene.
Yeah.
It was shot just like the Leia sequence in A New Hope. Yeah, that was really cool. And I
loved it. At the same time, though, like other things, I don't want that to become something that we see all the time.
No.
But for what it was, I loved it.
And even in just being a callback, they set up an awful lot of story in those few seconds where they were showing him getting the recording from R2. You know, he's doing recon on these rebels. So at some point, you know, that really is going to be the spark of rebellion.
Yep.
You know, so I thought that was cool. You know, that was one of the things that a lot of people talked about going in, was how this core group of characters will end up in relationship to the rebellion that we know.
Yeah.
And that was really the start of that. That last scene with Bail Organa.
Yep.
Were you taken at all by the way he sounded? His voice seemed odd to me.
No. I mean, that was Phil Lamar who voiced him during Clone Wars.
Yeah.
So, I mean, not really. I mean, obviously it wasn't going to be Jimmy Smits.
No. Although, like you said, they're doing Vader, and they've got James Earl Jones. So
yeah, and I mean, as far as I know, Billy D. Williams is going to appear at some point too.
Yep.
As Lando. So, I mean, it all just depends, I guess, on who's available and who can come in. Because, I mean, Clone Wars was like that too. I mean, sometimes, there was a couple episodes that Ahmad Best did Jar Jar. There was some that he didn't. Mm-hmm. And there was other characters that didn't appear, but then, Liam Neeson came on and did Qui-Gon. So, I guess you never really know.
Yeah. I think a lot of it probably depends on how the story surrounds that particular character.
Yeah.
If it's going to be a pivotal moment, like you were talking about with the Qui-Gon. I mean, that was a huge moment in the Clone Wars. There was really no way they couldn't have put the same weight on those scenes with Qui-Gon if it wasn't him.
Yeah, it's just weird because, like, I mean, if you could get someone like Liam Neeson, who right now is arguably one of the top box office draws in the United States, to come and do a bit voice on a cartoon show, you'd think that Peter Serafinowicz could come in and do Darth Maul. Mm-hmm. It's just really it's strange. Who does come in and who doesn't.
Although I will say, Sam Witwer sold me on Darth Maul.
No, he's really good.
He was amazing.
I just, it's just weird. I just thought it was weird who did come in and who didn't.
Yeah.
But anything that you would have done differently in this one?
Well, I did talk a little bit about Are we talking about just droids?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, unless there's something overall you want to talk.
No, and really, I don't have too many problems with it at all. When I was thinking about things that I would have changed, because we talked about that a little bit before we started, it's really just kind of nitpicky things. The one thing that's kind of irking me more than anything right now is them calling each other Spectre. That was driving me nuts.
Oh, really? I kind of liked it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I don't know why. I dug it.
It seemed like too much. And
yeah.
I noticed that I was thinking a lot. There's no way not to compare this to Clone Wars, so we're just going to keep doing that regardless. But the movie, the Clone Wars movie, and in the first season of the series, you had the Snips and the Sky Guy thing going back and forth, and that kind of
awful.
I'm sorry?
Which was awful.
Yes, and that's kind of what I thought of when they were all doing the Spectre 2s and 4s, and so it'll probably...
though, it kind of, I guess to me it was their code call signs in case they were bugged or being listened in on, so they weren't using their names.
Right. Oh, I totally understand why they're doing it.
Yeah.
But even when they got... Because they were even doing that once they were on the Ghost with 3PO and R2 around. They were still holding their call signs as opposed to using their real names. So I understand why they're doing it. That was, like I said, I'm being nitpicky.
Right. I get it.
That was one of the things. You had this amazing action sequence, because up until this point, the 2 episodes that we've seen, the Spark Rebellion and the Droids in Distress, every action sequence has been damn near perfect. They've been great. The choreography that they've done with the fights and everything.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Have been awesome. But like I said, you've got all of that going on, and I'm focused on the Spectre thing. So that was just one of the things that I noticed. The other thing that kind of bothered me a little bit about the Droids in Distress is, I'm getting ahead of myself in where we were talking about in the episode, but when they drop the walkers down onto the gun deal, Kanan takes a blast and just gets up and walks off.
Yeah.
I'm like, we could have had either a little bit more realism in how powerful those walkers are, or have him be a little bit more Jedi-like and get out of the way.
Right.
So, like I said, it's little things.
Yeah.
I really, and I had a hard time actually thinking of things that I didn't like.
Right. Right. My only one was really what we already talked about, was maybe a little bit of the overuse of themes in the music. That was it. I mean, really, it was a pretty good episode. Again, my whatever feelings towards R2-D2 and C-3PO and them being on this early in the show, but whatever. It's fine. I dug it by the end of it.
What did you think of Vizago, the criminal that they were dealing with the guns?
Oh, I thought he was interesting. Am I supposed to know more?
No. Oh. I was just wondered what you thought of him. It was.
No, I thought he was cool. I think he's interesting. I think he's gonna get. I think he's gonna be like Hondo in Clone Wars. I think eventually he's gonna get them in trouble.
That's exactly where I was going with that.
Yeah.
I don't know why I ask you these things, because we're already thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was a lot of similarities between those two.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm almost a little bit worried that they're drawing too many parallels. We've only seen 2 episodes, and we've done nothing but see parallels to the Clone Wars, and that's good to some extent, because Clone Wars was great, but I'd like to see a little bit more variety in the characters, like we were talking about with it's an enormous galaxy. It's a galaxy.
Right.
There has to be different personalities and different characters. You can't just have 5 different character types and that's all you plug into these new characters that you're making.
And I can't help but think, because of the fact that the main characters are all new, there's no carryovers from anything else, that they're kind of throwing a lot of this at especially kids to be like, hey, still Star Wars, you still know some of this. and they might then kind of get away from it as it goes on.
Once we get to know the core group
Yep.
of characters, you think
Yep.
that?
I definitely think that's why the Obi-Wan cameo was in the first one, and just really to be like, it's okay, it's still the same stuff.
Yeah, but at the same time, the Obi-Wan scene was really important.
It was.
They didn't. I think that's what I want more than anything else, is when they revisit characters that we all know, that we spent a good amount of time in the Clone Wars and the movies that we've watched for 30 plus years now. I want those characters to be special.
Yeah, and you want it to mean something.
Right. I don't want them just thrown in because we need familiar faces.
I agree. I'm hoping that the episode that Lando is in, there's a reason it's Lando, and it's not just because, hey, we could get Billy D. Williams.
Right. Yeah, and I'm hoping that's the case with. I think that's why they held back the Vader scene.
Yeah.
I think that's going to hold a lot of weight that I don't think anyone was expecting to see this early.
Yeah.
There's no way I expected to see Vader. There's no way I expected to see Vader this early on.
But to be honest, I would just be okay with the talk of Vader. Like, I just need to know he's there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to see him. I mean, I'm glad that I will get to, but
he's going to look great in that style.
Hell yeah.
They're going to sell a lot of toys.
And that's probably the most exciting thing to me. So, as we talked about our favorite things and the things we would change, the one thing I kind of wanted to bring up is the very first thing that's going to be hitting stores is going to be the Ghost Reveal the Rebels mission pack. It's a Toys R Us exclusive. I have not gotten my hands on this yet. Have you?
No, I don't even know if I've seen it. What is it?
Well, I haven't seen it anywhere yet. I've seen a couple people on Instagram have gotten it already. What it is, it's a 3-pack of Kanan, Ezra, and then a quote unquote secret mystery figure that's blocked out. But what it is, it's a holographic Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Oh, you know what? I think I did see maybe the packaging for that in a story or a picture. I mean, I definitely haven't. I was just in a Toys R Us a couple days ago, and there was a lot of Rebel stuff in there, but it wasn't the core 3/4 inch figures. It was everything else. They had
the big ones, and so this is the part that I'm probably the most excited about. Some people have complained because they're the 5 points of articulation figures, like just heads and the legs and the arms, but that also means the price point is down on them, which I'm cool with because I'm okay with them being like $5 to $6 to $7. I'm just gonna set them on a shelf anyway.
Right. Once I put mine up where they're going to go, it wouldn't matter if they were articulated or not.
Yep.
But they did do the same thing with the Clone Wars figures. They were the same style, and I don't think they had nearly as many points of articulation as the like the Saga Legends or the normal figures.
Later on they lost it, which is fine. But yeah, I'm really excited about this particular 3-pack, and when I get it, I think we'll definitely talk about it. And the plan for right now is that I will at least get one of each of the ones that appear in the show.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I did. I tried to do with Clone Wars. If they were in the show, I tried to get them.
Yeah, I did the same thing for the most part. They didn't really do nearly as many different figures with the Clone Wars as I thought they could have.
Well, they stopped after like season 3. Like there's hardly any figures from season 4. They did that Darth Maul pack with Savage Opress and the Night Sister, but the Night Sister was actually I think a canceled regular line because it's not really an animated style. It's more realistic.
Yeah, I did get that pack.
That was like, and then they came out with like one more wave of like the phase 3 clone troopers, and then that was kind of it.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't really do anything of the last couple of seasons, which was a big miss.
And I'm really surprised too, because usually Hasbro is well ahead of what is being shown.
Yeah,
they get those designs so early on that I can't believe they didn't have figures in pre-production or we should have seen figures well past where they actually canceled the show.
Yeah. Well, they changed their minds they decided that they weren't going to do any of the animated style anymore, and they would release Clone Wars characters but in a realistic style. And those didn't seem to go over too well then. And they've obviously backtracked on that because these Rebels figures are definitely animated style.
Yeah. Do you know? Did you ever read or hear what the reasoning was for?
No.
I mean, I can't imagine they didn't sell well, regardless of what style they were in. But
yeah.
I mean, you can't change what is essentially a kid's toy,
right,
into something they're not seeing on television.
Yeah.
If it's not going to look the same, you're not going to want it.
Right.
Unless you're collecting them and putting them all over your house. But if you're a kid who actually wants to play with them, you want what you see on television.
Exactly.
So changing those from animated style to a more realistic style that fits in more with the other lines of figures that they have, they probably shot themselves in the foot a little bit.
And I think they did. Because if you've noticed, I mean, right now they're getting real success with that new 6-inch line, but they're not really doing much with the 3 3/4-inch line. And I think that's hopefully going to change with the Rebels figures, and then obviously with whatever comes out next year.
Yeah. We're getting off topic a little bit, but that's fine. I've really enjoyed the 6-inch figures. I love those. The Black Series.
I haven't gotten any because I can't. If I go down that rabbit hole again, it's going to be bad.
I'll meet you down there because I already jumped in. But yeah, they're as close to the old Unleash line, as we've seen Hasbro get since those. And
I love those.
Those were hands down, I think, the best thing Hasbro has done. As far as, I mean, they were, I don't want to say Gentle Giant sideshow quality, but they were excellent for the prices they were.
Yep.
And the 6-inch Black Series is as close as we've gotten to that.
Yeah.
Since they've had those. But yeah, I'm really excited to see new toys. I'm excited to see any new toys.
Yep.
It's been so long since you've been motivated to go out to a store and actually, I always thought half the fun was the hunt.
Yep.
And you could only hit so many stores where there's only 3 or 4 pegs and they all have the same character on them before you kind of lose interest. And that's really where I got for a while.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, hopefully this is just the beginning. It's just the beginning of
next year is going to be.
Oh, I don't even want to think about how much money is going to come flying out of here next year.
Yes.
But it's really cool to see that we're looking at what's really a third generation of Star Wars fans now.
Yep.
And that was really exciting to me when they announced Rebels, because that was kind of the end of Generation 2. I know that's where my daughter got into it, was the Clone Wars. That was really what hooked her. And now you've got 8-9-year-olds coming up again, and this is going to be their Star Wars.
Yeah exactly.
So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing new toys, but I'm actually looking more forward to being excited about the hunt and people finding them, and there's just an excitement around it when those come out and you actually can find them.
Yeah. Yep. Well, all right. Well, great. I think that kind of covers what we wanted to do for this one, right?
Yeah, I think so. I really enjoyed this. I can't wait to do the next one.
Yeah, me too. So the next one is, what's it called? Do we know?
It is called Fight or Flight.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, I think that'll about wrap it up for this week. Kevin, where can they find us?
Right now they can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Rebels Rewind.
Awesome.
That's where we'll be for now, and we'll be able to communicate back and forth and post new shows. And
yeah, so if you're getting this and you can get on there and you're hearing this, make sure you comment about this coming week's show so we can talk about it on next week's show.
Yeah, give us some ideas, some things that you liked or didn't like about the episode, and we'll talk about them next week.
Awesome. All right. Well, hey, I'll see you next week, Kevin. I'm Nate.
I am Kevin.
You rebel scum.